Let's face it, choosing a touring bike can be a complicated task. Which derailleur did you get? Was it the 10 or the 11 speed? The Compact Road Double. So last year. Hey, it's Reggie, your bike touring instructor on Adventure Sport U. You don't need a fancy bike to do a tour. In fact, there's huge advantages to using an inexpensive bike, and odds are you probably already have one, collecting dust in your garage. In this lesson, I'll go through the components of a bike step by step and point out the key features that make a good touring bike. By learning to recognize these features, you'll be able to decide whether the bike you already own or something you bought for cheap is suitable for your touring needs. And it's a lot to remember, so I've made a cheat sheet with all the best tips from the lesson. Link in the description. Oh, one last thing. Before you commit to choosing a bike, you'll want to watch the start of my lesson 2, where I talk about frame sizing. That's all.
Ladies and gentlemen, this lesson will be broken down into components covering frame material, geometry, gearing, wheels and tires, handlebars, shifters and brakes, and accessory mounts. Right now we are looking at a bona fide touring bike. This Trek 620 has stood the test of time thanks to its frame material. Touring bikes are made of steel primarily for its strength and durability. A steel bike can handle the extra weight of your gear. Steel bikes are less stiff than carbon and aluminum, so they dampen vibration better and provide more comfort. Steel bikes can be identified by their round cylindrical tube shape and simple designs. The industry standard is chromoly steel because it's both lightweight and strong. If you don't use a steel bike, aluminum is the next best option. Geometry. Bicycle geometry can be a complex science and it's constantly evolving, so we'll keep this simple by only discussing a few relevant features. In a nutshell, touring bikes have a slack head tube angle, which provides stable steering under the added load of your gear. A taller head tube keeps your position more upright, providing a comfortable posture for riding long distances. In the next lesson, I'll show you some ways that you can slightly tweak your posture, but when choosing a frame, think like Goldilocks. You don't want to sit too slack, jabra, or too steep. Just right. Oh yay! Touring bikes also feature longer chainstays, which increase the clearance for your heels so they don't strike your panniers as you pedal. Longer chainstays also increase the overall wheelbase, which in addition to a lower bottom bracket, helps add to the stability of the bike. If you're interested in learning more about geometry, check out the bike touring page on adventuresportu.com, where I provide links to additional material. Gearing. Your bicycle's drivetrain consists of a front set of gears called chain rings, which mount to your crank. The cassette, or freewheel, refers to the cluster of cogs attached to the rear wheel. The chain connects the two sets of gears. Both the front derailleur and the rear derailleur move in order to position the chain and shift gears. To determine if our bike has adequate gearing for touring, we'll need to calculate the gear inches of the lowest gear setting. Gears are generally labeled by how many teeth they have. Find the tooth count of the smallest chainring in the front and the largest cog in the back. If you can't find an inscription, you'll have to count the teeth one by one. Next, determine your wheel diameter. It's the first of the two numbers on your tire sidewall. If your tire says 700C, substitute 28 inches in the calculation. Doing the calculation is easy. Start by taking the number of teeth in the front chainring and dividing it by the number of teeth in the rear cog. We'll take that number and multiply it by the number of inches in your wheel diameter. The lowest gear on our Trek gives us 20 gear inches. You can use the same equation to find your high gear combo, which takes the largest chainring in the front and the smallest cog in the back. The highest gear setting on our Trek gives us 100 gear inches. And don't worry, this is all on the cheat sheet. The ideal gearing range will vary based on the weight of your load, the terrain profile, and rider fitness. In general, modern touring bikes feature a range of 18 inches as their low gear and 113 as their high gear. Whichever bike you choose, just make sure it has a good low gear, aka the granny gear. Having a solid granny will help you spin your heavy load over climbs. Higher gearing will force you to muscle through the hills, which increases the strain on your joints and leads to painful injuries that could end your tour.
Oh.
The gratitude you feel for your granny gear will easily outweigh the annoyance of spinning out on a flat or downhill. And shout out to my solid granny, Mary, who logged some epic adventures on this Trek 620. This course wouldn't have been possible if it weren't for you. Thanks, Grandma. Wheels and tires. After the frame, wheels are the next major component that contribute to the overall ride feel of your bike. Components of the wheel include the hub and the rim, tensioned by spokes and nipples. For touring, we need strength and durability, and a good way to size up a wheel is by counting its spokes. With only 24 spokes, this lightweight racing wheel is a good example of what we wouldn't want to use. Compare that with this 36-spoke wheel, and we have a clear winner. Although even on the strongest wheels, you can still get a broken spoke. So look for wheels with simple spokes and lacing patterns, which will be easier to repair out in the field. Our main goal when selecting tires is to look for stability, traction, and resistance to puncture. To find the tire measurement, check the sidewall for the two numbers separated with an X. The first number is a reference to your wheel diameter, and the second refers to the inflated tire's width. Wider tires provide more stability and traction than their narrower counterparts. Just remember that wider tires are slower rolling, and double check that they'll have sufficient clearance for your frame and fork. Look for tires advertising puncture-resistant features like Kevlar lining. Choose an all-weather tire with texture or siping for improved traction and control in loose or wet conditions. You'll also want to use conventional tubes over tubeless, since they can be easily changed if you puncture. Tires take a lot of wear and tear, so if your bike has old, damaged, or thin tires, follow these guidelines to purchase new ones before your tour. Just be sure to match the tire diameter, and check that the new tire width will fit your frame. Handlebars. The most common handlebars found on touring bikes are drops and flats. Drop handlebars are the classic choice for touring for a few reasons. They provide comfort by allowing you to modify your posture across 3 positions: the tops, the hoods, and the drops. Drops save you energy by putting you in a narrow and aerodynamic posture, and this lower posture also gives you better leverage over the bike. Another reason to love drops is they give your bike that sophisticated look. Flat bars can be found on virtually any type of bicycle, owing to their simple design. Risers are a type of flat bar with varying degrees of upsweep. The wide contact points on flat bars provide confidence and stability when handling. Flat bars also have ample space in the cockpit to mount accessories. Oops. Oh yeah, that's right. I know what I'm doing. The last thing to consider when choosing handlebars is that they'll affect the controls for your shifters and brakes. There's 2 main types of shifting: friction and index. Friction shifters are common on touring bikes because they're low maintenance and easy to use. They allow you to adjust the position of the derailleur manually, which requires more attention while riding, but less maintenance over time. Bow, chicka, wow, wow. Index shifters move the derailleur in specific increments, allowing you to shift quickly and precisely, but they require more adjustment to retain their accuracy. Aside from routine adjustments, the internals on index shifters can wear out over time, which might require you to replace the entire shifter. Modern drop bar bikes have integrated index shifters into the brake lever, but this style isn't commonly used in bike touring, as gear stored between the handlebars can interfere with their function. They're also more prone to damage from a crash. Not again! Brakes also come in 2 types: disc and rim. Disc brakes offer superior braking power and modulation over rim brakes. They're also more reliable in wet conditions. The downside is that they're more complicated to service and are not commonly found on older bikes. The rim brake options for touring are V-brakes and cantilever brakes. V-brakes provide more overall braking power, but their design is slightly bulkier than cantilever and could interfere with rack or gear mounting. Cantilever brakes have been around the longest, so I'd say they're reliable, but they score the lowest in terms of braking power. For touring purposes, the pros and cons of each brake style are marginal. As long as they're properly adjusted and safely bring your bike to a complete stop, then you're good to go. Thank you. Accessory mounts. The final feature we'll cover are rack and accessory mounts. The rear rack is not actually a part of the frame, but an accessory mounted at 2 points along the seat stays. Starting near the seat post, look for 2 threaded holes on the seat stays. Next, check down where the seat stays meet the chain stays for the lower mounting points. If your bike has a mounting point in the middle of the fork and at the crown, then you can install a front rack. Front fenders can be mounted if there's holes at the dropouts and the crown of the fork. Rear fenders share a spot on the lower rear rack mounts and at the bridge between the seat stays. Lastly, bottle cage mounts are commonly located inside of the front triangle on the seat tube or the down tube. On some bikes, you may find them on the underside of the down tube.
So there you have it. Now that you know what to look for, go check and see if your bike is up to spec. If your bike didn't make the cut, or you don't already have a bike yet, I have a ready-made solution for you.
Steel mountain bikes from the 1990s make great touring bikes, and you can buy them practically anywhere for cheap. I picked up this classic 93 Hard Rock on Craigslist for only 50 bucks. Ka-ching! Let's run through the list and see what makes it so great. It's made of lightweight chromoly steel, has simple and durable 36-spoke wheels, wide tires with traction and in good condition, a reliable drivetrain with a 28-inch granny gear, a tall stem that creates an upright and comfortable posture, and that classic two-tone paint job. Oh yes, very nice. It also has both the upper and lower rear rack mounts for the rack I'll install in a later lesson. And speaking of later lessons, don't forget to watch lesson 2 to learn how to size your frame and make fit adjustments. Well, thanks for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, post your questions in the comments below, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new lessons from Adventure Sport U.